So I thought, well, hang on, this is not right either. This is what I mean when I say that legislation is quite weak. I thought, well, I have to get battered, senseless, and unless I have a broken arm or bruises, the system's not going to believe me. And then I did get bruises, and I called the police, and I had him removed. And then I had to go through the courts to have an injunction put on him.
Right.
And then then you are. That brings me. We have the community. You have the direct abuse from your partner in that house. Then you have the subtle abuse from the community. That's the other level, and then there's the third level, which is abuse from the outside non-Asian community, where legislation, judges, social workers.
But you did say that, okay, when you did report the abuse, that you needed to have bruises to show that this is actually happening. Well, when you did show them bruises and you went to the authorities and you said, look, now do you believe me? Did they then do anything against your husband, or was he a free man?
No, it was left to me to bring charges, which I did, and I summoned up the courage to take him to court. I didn't get any support from my family. Nobody went with me. I went literally on my own. Mm-hmm. And it was common assault. The charge that was brought against him was common assault. And when you're being abused, life is a blur. You don't remember dates. You don't remember times. You're not thinking straight. So what his solicitors did, they started to ask me dates and times. And because I couldn't...
Would you advise women that are watching us now that might be in a similar situation to you to document this?
Yes, I know it's very hard. I know it's very hard because the last thing you want to do is pick up a pen and paper. But not only document it, but write it down. Write down what's happened to you as a release, as a form of release. It's a form of self-therapy at the time. And then you can actually use those documents if you need to and hide them.
So you hadn't, obviously, because, who would think that while you're being abused and that you need to then run off into your room and write down, what day it is, what time it is, what you had for dinner, when did this happen. You didn't do that. So what was the next step then?
Well, the most interesting thing was that because my husband couldn't speak English, he needed an interpreter.
Were you then interpreting for him?
Well, it was a friend of his who happened to be working for the council at the time. He had quite a prominent position in the council, and he was quite on the ball. What he did, when my husband was getting cornered by my barrister, this guy stood up and said, hold on a minute, everybody, the interpreting is not quite correct. So by law, if there is any doubt that the interpretation is not correct, they have to then abort the trial.
Okay.
So the trial was aborted just on the objection of this one man who was a personal friend.
So your husband never ever actually was penalized. He never had to pay for any of the stuff he's done to you in terms of a jail sentence. Or
when the case was aborted, my representation said to me, to be honest, that it's your word against his. And I said to him, that's the very nature of domestic violence in this case. Mm-hmm. We were in a house on our own. My children are too young, and even if they were old enough, I wouldn't put them in this position. So it's the very nature of the beast that he's going to abuse me when I'm isolated on my own. Right. So why does the law not recognize that?
And the thing is that women that are being abused statistics show that they'll be hit 35 times before they actually report it to the authorities. There's that stigma attached to being abused. Women feel ashamed.
Yes.
We're talking about domestic violence. We'll be back after this short break. Hi, welcome back to Broken Silence. I'm Sanyya Gardez. Today we're talking about domestic violence. UK police attend a domestic violence incident every minute of every hour of every day. Joining me on the panel is Kelly Kaur from Through Care Housing and Support. Thank you for joining us today, Kelly.
Thank you for inviting me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your organization?
What I've done is I've set up an organisation called Through Care Housing and Support. What that actually does is we house and support women who suffer in domestic violence, forced marriages, which leads into homeless. So we house them and support them in any way from guidance, to life skills, but we also house men as well.
Really? And
Yeah.
there is that misconception that survivors of abuse are just primarily, mainly women, and that's true, but there are men that suffer
There are
abuse
men,
as well.
especially now, especially with the forced marriage, which is out there more now.
Mm-hmm.
So you tend to find that because obviously men suffer it as well because they're in a situation where the family's saying that
Is
they've got to
forced
get married.
marriage a sort of, is that domestic abuse?
Well, it is in some ways, but it's more, it's not, I mean, there is a lot in the media at the moment about honour killing and that, but there isn't much about where you call like mental abuse, where the whole family gets together and says that, you know, for Izza, to respect to the family, you've got to marry this person to keep the family name going, or, you know, Fulan Nasser won't talk to you, and, you know, so you've got to get married.
Now, what's your personal experience been like with abuse?
My personal worry is that my mother was married to a white guy, so she left the society, Asian society, and this was about 30 odd years ago. So back, you know, in the late 60s, that wasn't allowed. So because I'm the daughter of her,
Sure.
I'm classed as a daughter. So from my childhood, I've been suffered abuse because of what she's actually done.
From extended family and the
From
community?
extended family, from the community. So my parents said to me that I had to marry a guy from India to get the respect
Just
back.
to kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So that's what you ended up doing then?
So no, I didn't in the end. What I'd actually done was actually left home because I wasn't ready to get married at all. I wanted to go to
How
college.
old were you?
16.
Okay.
So 16. So from the age of from the age of childhood, I was always getting mental abuse because it was drilled into my head that your mom did wrong, you can't do it. You know, people think you're a slag, so you cannot, you know, ruin the family's
yes,
name.
just for Izzat's sake, they wanted
Yeah.
you to kind of, go home and marry somebody from back home. You opted not to. You left home.
Yes, that's what I did, yeah. So I left home, but still today I still get it because even though I've married an Asian guy, I still now get it from my in-laws side where my sister-in-laws don't respect me at all.
See, now this is very interesting, and I think it's just in our Asian community where domestic abuse isn't just with your partner, it then includes your in-laws as well.
Yeah, it can go to the extent, I mean, I get it quite regular from particularly one sister-in-law who is older than myself, who was brought up in this country, but yet she still gives me that stigma that I'm a because I've had a love marriage, I've left home, and I've got my own mind, and I speak out. So that's
is
the
it
sort of
emotional abuse then?
It's emotional abuse, which is really hard to sometimes prove that, you know, you're suffering inside because they class you as an outcast person.
Now, look, somebody, women watching us now, this isn't just, exclusive to your case. Many women are abused psychologically from their in-laws, from their partner, from the community. If they then decide to leave that marriage and go to a support agency, would emotional abuse be looked upon the same way as physical abuse, or is it something that's kind of dismissed?
I think a lot of it's dismissed, but because personally I've been through it myself, sometimes I think it's a bit more than physical, where you're getting a beating from the partner, which is not right. But when it's mental abuse, it's inside and you're hurting from inside because you feel as though that there's nobody out there for you that supports you, that loves you, and that you have done something wrong because it's not just one person who's picking on you, it's the whole society. Then you start looking at yourself and thinking, it's got to be me, because I must have done something wrong in my past life or my present life because why does everyone not respect me for who I am?
Well, here we are back onto reincarnation. I think us Asians, we tend to blame a lot of stuff on past life. I'm suffering because I must have done this in the past life. Well, it doesn't help you in this life to have that kind of thinking.
Yeah. So that's why I've set this organization up to say that, it's not you that's got to change. It's society that has to change around you. At the end of the day, just because someone's done something wrong doesn't mean that you should be tarnished for what they've done or for their life. You can still be a Asian person. You can still have your culture. You can still do what you want to do. But just because somebody else has done something doesn't then make you to be that wrong person.
Well, for those who are saying that, when she went through her experience, it was the early 90s, and we're talking about, society hasn't really moved on that much. Is that been your experience as well? Do you think we've actually progressed